All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the West Texas Milwaukee School Board to order. Ms. Lee, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Suzanne, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Beal. Here. Mr. Sickett.
Present.
Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mrs. Carr. Here. Mr. Becker.
Here.
Mr. Burns.
Present.
Mrs. Lee. Here. Mrs. Kaiser. Here. Present Lee.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting have been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Do you have any modifications to the agenda this evening?
No modifications.
All right, great. Then we'll move right into the superintendent's report.
Good evening. We do have a couple of things we want to highlight on tonight. Want to pull it up? All right, yes. There we go. So we want to start with legislative updates. Governor Evers recently signed Assembly Bill 321 related to updating early literacy instruction into law. The bill, drafted in coordination with the Department of Public Instruction, makes several comprehensive updates to literacy instruction designed to help improve reading and literacy outcomes for K through 12 students. So the bill creates an official Office of Literacy at DPI, creates a Council of Early Literacy curricula, creates a literacy coaching program, creates grants to cover 50% of the cost of purchasing curriculum and instructional materials, which is definitely a benefit to us. Prohibits the use of instruction or materials that contains the 3 cueing method of literacy instruction, increases the frequency of screening and diagnostic reading assessments, requires changes in how educators are prepared to teach reading. So I will say this: a lot of this this bill, it really updates what's the latest strategies and suggestions for early literacy, and definitely looking at some of the things that we're doing in our district. It's not going to be that much of a shift because we are currently using programs like Scholastic for early literacy, and we are using our running records with our students as well. So some of this, it will be just more of a how we implement it, but it won't be that wholesale changes. But we're definitely glad that there's an emphasis put on early literacy. If they're not reading by a certain grade level, then they're almost doomed. And so that's definitely a plus for this particular bill. Also, its vetoes, Governor Evers' vetoes have left a $4 billion surplus. And so throughout this particular session, that surplus, I'm pretty sure will benefit us in some kind of way, hopefully, at some point, but it's always good that we have a surplus as a state. So there are no federal updates at this time. I'm going to go directly into district recognitions. From DACI, DACI would like to recognize 4 students: Alex Westlake, Journey Love, Dana Brandt, and Melody Young, for being presenters at the summer convening conference through the Institute of Personalized Learning. These students talked about how they learn at DACI, why project-based learning is important to them, and how their projects amplify their voice. And the next slide has a couple of pictures. You want to show that up? Sorry. Right. The communications department, Dr. Stewart, she wants to thank you to Jordan Pollard, the teacher at Franklin Elementary, Andrea James, leadership and learning project manager in the West Allis, West Milwaukee theater students who made this commercial for Wisconsin Vision happen. It was a great real life experience for the students to get to be a part of a full day of filming for this commercial. So we're going to give you a little snippet of this commercial at this time. what they did in preparing this particular commercial. Thank you to Dr. Stewart for assisting us in guiding them through this process. So other updates, I did want to provide feedback on that. I don't know why.
Echoed now. Could be there. Is that better?
I think.
I think we're okay.
We're okay now?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're echoing anymore now.
Sorry about that.
We're good. So from now until the beginning of the school year, I want to provide you guys and the community an update on HR because it's hiring season, as I like to call it. And so we currently have 13 new hires pending processing. I know in our weekly reports, we're giving you updates. We're definitely being a little bit more proactive, and these 13 are only waiting on background checks before their final approval. Some of the things that we are looking at specifically are special education vacancies. We currently have 4.5 vacant FTEs for elementary, 4.5 for intermediate, and 4 for high school. Just say high school. And one of these special education positions actually is in hiring progress, so that's included in that 13. So some of the efforts that we're undertaking right now is we're looking at going back to using better Teams recruiting website to get our message out there. We've been on LinkedIn on today, publicizing the fact that we're looking for teachers. We're also highlighting and putting out there that we are increasing and having a wage adjustment for special education teachers of $5,000 to attract our teachers who have that particular certification. There is definitely a nationwide shortage, but in Wisconsin, it seems like we're really getting hit, especially in our district, with vacancies for special education. We also just want to kind of remind you that we did have the $1,500 stay incentive that was paid to all teachers in 2 installments this past year. For any teachers that were in good standing, the end of the year bonus also was paid and funded from ESSER. CPI was also added at 5%. And then there was an option for salary reevaluation option available to all educators, including special education. And so we are definitely being active and will continue to provide updates, not only to the community, but to the board specifically on our efforts in making sure that we reduce that number. This past week, I hit the ground learning as I promised to do. I remember on Tuesday, following our board meeting, I was visiting Hale and a teacher came up to me and said, "Okay, you kept your word." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She says, "You're here this morning." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm here." And she said, "You're here to learn about what's going on at our school." I said, "You paid attention to the meeting last night." And so that was good to know that she watched the meeting. So some of the campuses I visited, Hartsman, Hale, FLW, Mitchell, Central, and West Milwaukee. In visiting with those principals, just walking around, trying to figure out how they're doing in the summertime, checking on hiring, checking on just culture of the campus and overall aesthetics as far as the campus is concerned. Also spent a particular amount of time at summer camps and interacting with students. And you know, I'm sort of a fan favorite over there now. I get called out and yelled at and said, "Hey, you live next to my grandmother." So I guess they're starting to learn who I am. And so that's a great thing. I love that. And then just sitting down and talking with staff members and getting to know those members of the team is very important to me. And that I'm really investing in not only our teachers, but our people who work in the schools, but also who work in our community and rec centers. And so I think that's very important as well. We did host our cabinet retreat on last Tuesday. We had 16 central office and cabinet members to participate. We did a variety of activities, team building. We looked at individual needs because I felt it was important that each one of our leaders understands who they are as an individual and their uniqueness as an individual. And then once we discovered who they were as individuals, we had them to take a leadership style assessment. from that the leadership style assessment, they discovered the type of leader they are. And then once we discovered what type of leader you are, then we moved on into how does your leadership fit into the dynamic of the team. And so we're pushing team and trying to make sure that we are aligning our practices with our mission statement. And so we looked at the mission statement of the district, broke it up, and then tried to conduct a SWOT analysis. I say try because we did not complete, because we're going to now take that document and now take it to the principals and allow them to have input in a couple of weeks at our leadership retreat for principals. So this is a work in progress, but this is another way for us to collect data and to make sure that we're looking at the right things and just really evaluating and having some honest conversations with ourselves and making sure that we're looking at the right things. Also, my parent meetings, Starbucks is like my favorite location right now. When I pick up my morning Joe, I'm usually running to a parent and hey, how are you doing? I know who you are. And that didn't stop this morning. It continued. And I enjoy that. I love being a part of the community, and that they feel that I am a part of it. And that's definitely a great feeling. Staff and teacher conversations. And then the team of 10 work. Got to get that right. I've held 5 one-on-one meetings so far. I have 5 to go, and we'll get that knocked out sometime next week. But I have thoroughly enjoyed breakfast, lunch, and I think tomorrow we have dinner, so early dinner. So it's just a good option. And one of the adjustments that I am going to make is, and this is in council with Mr. Lee, is moving it to every other month to make sure that our conversation is fresh and not watered down. So I think at the last meeting, I did say every month, we'll go every other month. And so look out for Suzette to schedule our meetings in September to do some follow-ups and just to make sure that we stay engaged. And also just to wrap up my comments, I feel like I'm going a little too long. Our principal and campus orientations have begun. We're bringing in each principal. We're having some honest dialogue and trying to figure out what they do well and how they do their work at their campus. It's important that I learn. And so I've learned so much. I think we've completed 5 so far. And it's just been engaging. I mean, it's just trying to figure out where we are as a district, where we are as a campus, and how they lead as a campus leader. And then at the same time, trying to figure out what those gaps are so we can provide those supports. And all of our cabinet members, depending on their schedule, are participating in those conversations, because then they can kind of fill those gaps and say, okay, from an HR standpoint, how can I support you? From Parks and Recs, how can I support you? From Leading and Learning, how can I support you? That's been beneficial, student services. So we've been able to really have some great conversations and to seek some input, gain input from our principals. I think the last slide is just some pictures from our cabinet retreat where I left tired because I was doing a lot of the facilitation, but the feedback that I received from the cabinet retreat was definitely heading in the right direction. And so I just want to thank our team for their participation and their support. I did left the card upstairs, but I will send a special shout out to Connie and the enrollment team. We are doing the handwritten messages to all of our new enrollees. And so I did want to send a special shout out. I'll make sure that you guys get a copy of it so you can see what we're giving to our new parents and welcoming them to our community. But it's just a good way, I just think, that we just kind of personalize that approach to them and make sure they feel welcome to our district. So that concludes our superintendent's report.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to our public comments this evening. So for those that may have be joining on Zoom, if you'd like to give a public comment, there's a link in the chat to sign up. For those giving public comments, you have 3 minutes to do so. Please state your name and address before beginning your comments. There won't be any back and forth conversation with the board, but if there's a simple question or comment that could be responded to for clarification purposes, we will do that. Otherwise, any additional response will happen by the next regular Board of Education meeting. So with that, we have Daisy Jimenez.
Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. Daisy Jimenez, and my address is 1566 South 58th Street, West Dallas. We have been a West Dallas, West Milwaukee family for, gosh, many years. My oldest started in K3, so we are the product of early childhood education. And both of my kids now are entering our West Milwaukee Middle School. I come to you today to talk to you a little bit about my youngest son, who is now entering as a sixth grader in West Milwaukee this upcoming year. He early on in his life, we found out that he is severely allergic to peanuts. A very an allergy that is growing in numbers, and we are seeing that at a higher number in different areas of the country and the planet. As a school, sending my kid with a severe allergy to the schools have been very scary. And as you can maybe relate, if you're a parent, you will be able to relate to how we're dealing with a lot of safety concerns in our buildings. My biggest concern is my kid is going to go into anaphylactic exposure and then die. And that is a true reality for us. My son has to have an EpiPen. We have had ups and downs in the elementary school that he was with how things have been managed. And most of the time, I'll tell you where the hiccups have come up is because people don't really understand what cross-contamination is when you have someone with a severely allergy to food. So the school has accommodated us by providing us a medical plan. The school district has accommodated us now by having a 504 plan. All of that looks good on paper, but we need this implementation to carry out in a way that people truly do understand terms like cross-contamination. What does it mean that we as a district are also not a peanut-free district? And I want to elaborate why I wanted to bring this up to your attention, because that's really a lot of the times when people think that we're advocating for a peanut-free district, it doesn't mean that I don't want peanut butter at all in the building. I cannot tell another parent what they can and cannot feed their child. None of us can. We know that. But in our lifetime as students in the elementary school that he had been, my child has been exposed twice to peanut butter in the cafeteria because he had been served by Sodexo. That is a no-no. That's why I ask you to really think about what is our current policy about the different foods that we can serve to our kids and not serve. The other time that he have also been directly exposed to peanut butter is through our recreation programs when he did one of the days off. Again, those mistakes happen often because people are not understanding what cross-contamination means. So I just ask you to really, if you could, take a minute of what our food distribution policies are and why we may want to really consider becoming a peanut-free district within our own means of the cafeteria and what we're serving to our kids. Because my child deserves to feel safe, just like every other kid does. So thank you.
Thank you. That is the only person that we had signed up for public comments this evening. So I will close public comments at this time and move on to our board reports, starting with 8.1, or the board calendar. So tonight we have our regular Board of Education meeting. And then our next meeting is on Monday, August 14th at 6 p.m. We have a regular Board of Education meeting. And then we have a workshop, college career readiness, for the student code of conduct and secondary cell phone expectations. So this will be an opportunity for us as a board to consider what we want our cell phone policy to be moving into this next school year. And the goal of this will be to take action on that. So we'll be coming out of the workshop into open session to take action on that policy so that we have 2 solid weeks to communicate that policy to our families and our students and our staff. So just so everyone is aware of that. And we will be getting, the board will be getting a copy of what the code of conduct policy, committee has been working on for that, so we can review it ahead of time. And then if there's questions or concerns beforehand, we can address those at that time. So just want to make sure everyone's clear on that piece. It will be an important one that we take up so that we can ensure that we're ready to roll when the school year starts. Then on Monday, August 21st at 6 p.m., we have a workshop, a retreat here in consulting group. And or a referendum discussion. And then on a Monday, August 28th at 6 p.m., we have our regular Board of Education meeting. Moving on 8.2, our committee reports this evening. 8.2.1 is employee engagement and culture. Mr. Keller.
Thank you. Our committee met on July 8th, first area of that we discussed was the vacancy report. So a little bit in terms of about what that looks like at the different school and levels. Dr. Robinson touched on a little bit, but definitely some work to do still to make sure that we get our roles filled. We talked a little bit about some handbook updates for our employee handbook. And then the final thing was just talked a little bit about a leave summary for 22-23. We had 72 leaves that were processed during the last school year. We talked a little bit as well about suggestions for upcoming meetings. So one of the things we want to do is take a look at what we can take off teachers' plates. So what can we pull back from teachers to allow them to spend more time doing what adds the most value in terms of working with the students. And some of the other things were like automated reporting grades, and progress, athletic eligibility. What things can we automate, or can administration kind of pull, or what administrative assistants can possibly pull off? So I think one of the things was to have a conversation with Mike, who's our Skyward expert, to see where we can do some of those things in that regard. And that was it.
All right, any questions for Mr. Keller or his committee regarding that report? Just had one. For the leaves, you mentioned that 72 leaves for last school year. Was that tracked previously? Is that high, low, equal, equivalent to what we looked in the past? We're trying to see if we're looking at trends at all.
Yeah.
We're trying to get trends, but we don't have that yet. That was just our first look.
Thank you.
All right. Nothing else, or anything for the committee consider at future agendas? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Keller. Moving on to 8.2.2, our financial stability and efficiency report, Ms. Kaiser.
Good evening. Thank you. On July 17th, we met as a committee to discuss a referendum 2024 financial analysis. We were joined by Mark Duff and Michael Clark from Baird. We were presented with potential options to address our district's most pressing needs. In no particular order, these priorities are staff compensation, facilities and grounds, CIP costs, and technology and curriculum adoptions. This was the first of 2 committee meetings where we hashed out the information. We will again be discussing this topic of a potential November of 2024 referendum at our August Finance Committee, followed by a full board workshop in August. This workshop will lay out the upcoming financial needs for the district and the reasons for potentially asking 2 referendum questions, one for facilities and one for operating. We also reviewed statewide data as it pertains to when referendums are most successful. Per the analysis, referendums that target the highest voter turnout have the most success in passing. So that said, we are looking at a potential of November of 2024 referendum question. We also discussed the budget calendar. Budget action item and paternity leave mid-September might coincide with one another. So Mr. Norris is planning ahead for who will fill in for that action item. And that is my report.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Kaiser regarding that report? Any items to be considered on future agendas for her committee? I'll only add that I'm encouraged to see the referendum work moving forward. I know we've been talking about it for a while now. So getting into the nitty-gritty details is going to be important. And I think this timeline that we're looking at will allow us to be able to not only think about it as a board, but then also be able to look for community input on what that's going to look like once we kind of figure out where we want to move forward with that discussion.
Actually, I'm gonna add my own agenda item. If we could discuss Sodexo at our next meeting and changes we can see there possibly.
Anything else for anyone? Thank you very much. And we'll move on to 8.2.3, recreation and community services, Mr. Becker.
Thank you. The Recreation Committee met last Monday on the 17th. We had a little bit of trouble getting the first meeting set, so it was a little bit of a lengthy docket here. The first thing we covered was some of the materials used for activity signups. There were 2 methods we were working on. One is the online resource that exists on the district page. We had some discussions on making it a little bit more user friendly and making it easier for families to sign up. The second one is the printed version, which is it's designed to be a little more brief. So we worked on, we were discussing ways to move it from roughly 3.5 pages that it is down to about 1 page. This is a document that is sent out with registration packets, so we were talking about making it really nice and clean, adding links. We spoke offline about adding a QR code to make it really easy for everybody to get in, really painlessly. A little bit of discussion as well on updates for the schools that have been consolidated, mostly Lane for the middle school signups for sports. Next, we talked about the athletic initiatives coming up. So one was the restructured sports fees policy. There's issues where sometimes athletes or kids in activities will have fees that'll pile up over time, and then by the time they get to graduation, then it gets to be a really big fee and it can be a bit sticky. So we're trying to avoid that by having the fees, having them be paid prior to participation in the next activity. So it's not going to build up season after season, year after year. Next, we had a quick discussion or just an update on the coaching salaries. It's a global update or increase to the coaching salaries. And there's no impact on the budget because it was due to some fund reallocation. Another item we hit was the availability of online ticket sales, and that'll streamline the gate entries. You don't have to pay cash at the gate. Adding some more intramural sports. We also talked about recreation co-ops with some neighboring rec departments. That's going to allow we have clinic programs for softball and soccer, but with these co-op programs, now those kids will get opportunities for some games as well. What else did we cover? There was a little bit of discussion too on the co-op sports. We worked on that last year and there were some updates to the co-op policies. This one was about shared costs and shared ownership rather than one school or the other owning it. Now it's going to be a shared true partnership. Next, we moved on to junior sports and we had a little bit of discussion on some of the updates going on to the code of conduct, trying to have a little bit better alignment and coordination between the sports and the rest of the district. We had construction updates for the, bear with me. It was for the rec center updates. There's a delayed construction start due to availability of materials, but CG Schmidt informed us that it should not affect the finish date. It's still going to be on target. We had discussion on the lane zoning. The anticipation is that we don't have, it should be pretty smooth. We anticipate support from the aldermen who we require sponsorship from. And one item that we had for future discussion, it came up during the junior sports piece. We reviewed the strategic plan for recreation departments. We looked at Oconomowoc as the model. So the strategic plan would contain the code of conduct, mission, vision, something that's a little bit more comprehensive and talks about the philosophies behind what we're trying to do with the rec department. And that's it.
All right.
Thorough.
Are you sure?
That's all that's on the page.
Yeah.
That's all I wrote, yeah.
We covered a lot.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Becker. Any questions for any of the things that Mr. Becker reported on? Ms. Kaiser?
Do we have it in place where students who are financially unavailable to pay for their sports fees? Do we have something in place for that?
Yeah, so if they qualify for free and reduced lunch, that also, if they fill that form out and they qualify for that, that also has reduced or waived fees depending on that. So that's automatic. But parents, families do need to fill that form out in order for that to be an automatic thing.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Becker? Or any items he might consider at his next meeting?
Oh, I did miss, I was gonna give Dr. Robinson a shout out for showing up to all the rec events, but he beat me to it, so I didn't want to belabor the point.
Sounds good, Mr. Becker. All right, I think that ends our board reports for this evening. We do have 8.3 board member reports of community events. Any community events board members attended? Ms. Kaiser?
Just a reminder to do your online registration via Skyward, including those like related to if you need free and reduced meals, although we are having free meals for universally through the district. We do want to make sure students who are in financial needs for other forms and fees get those supports. And my two kids, all the information's there already. You click a couple times and you move on. So it took me less than 10 minutes for two kids. So please make sure you get that done so we don't have to chase you down.
Yes. Anything else? Okay, and then 8.4, other update items and information that's for me. So I'll just mention, so I know I've emailed everyone regarding a board retreat that Dr. Robinson would like to do as the team at 10 to try and help coalesce us around one goal outside of obviously leading our district. So I have gotten some response from some of you, but not from all of you. I would like to expand the time frame just based on the dates I've received back. So let's look into October as well. Just to give me some availability for September and October. I think that's where we're going to have to be at this point in order to get something on a Saturday. So again, looking at a Saturday from roughly 8 to 4. All right, so with that, I'll move on to the consent agenda this evening. Starting with 9.1, approval of minutes from our regular Board of Education meeting on July 10th. 9.2, our employment summary. 9.3, our supplementary contracts, and 9.4, our financial summary. Is anything separated out?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right, that passes. Thank you very much. And then we have our one action item this evening, 10.1, the 23-24 Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. Mr. Norris.
Evening, everyone. So the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook is an annual approval from the board. It essentially allows the online registration, which is different than enrollments, but confused equally. It allows families to go on and engage in that process to prepare for school in September. So I know it was mentioned earlier that the code of conduct work and the cell phone policy is being worked on. So that will be a future action item in August. Hopefully the 14th is what we're looking at for both, actually. So hopefully that'd be great to have that done. So so this approval tonight allows families who are engaging in online registration to be signing off on a board approved rights and responsibility handbook, which will later be I guess an addendum would be approved by the board to the policy that would be here today. So with that, there's some minor updates to that, just mostly informational, name changes, different people in different positions, who to contact for what. But essentially, the policy that the families are signing would be the same as it was last year until those code of conduct pieces and cell phone expectations are finalized and board approved. So with that, I would take any questions.
So just for clarity, the code of conduct that's in this is the old code of conduct, which is being updated, which we will take separate action on, hopefully on the 14th, which would include the cell phone policy, which right now the code of conduct doesn't have a cell phone policy. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yeah. They'll be separate pieces, but yes, but they will both live in the rights and responsibilities handbook. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then parents would expect to get an addendum, a request basically to reapprove that once we pass it.
Yeah, and we'll have to work through like logistics on that.
Mhm.
But it has happened in previous years. In my time at Hale, we had a rights and responsibilities update mid-year and all this. We had all the freshman assembly, everyone signed. I mean, it went home with the parents. It was a whole thing. So we're hoping that if done in mid-August, we can send out an addendum through the online reg process to capture as many families as possible, to have less disruption in September, which is obviously better given the amount of disruption that goes on in the school, the first week of school, right? So
Sure.
but no other way to do it. Otherwise, you have to push it back a whole year, which I don't think any one of us would agree to do that. So, yeah.
Any other questions? I look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
And seconded, any last minute discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. That ends our business for this evening. So for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, you're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.